Welcome to the Let's Get Vulnerable podcast. It's your host, Dr. Morgan, and I am so excited. We have Kat Harris with us today. Welcome, Kat. So glad to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and just excited to get to chat with you and talk about all the things, love, dating,
Yes,
I don't know, whatever you guys want to talk about. I'm really excited.
I love it. And I want to let the audience know who you are. So I'm going to do a short intro. Kat is the host of the Refined Collective podcast, which I've been listening to, and it's awesome. She's also the co-founder of the online publication, The Refined Woman. Her first book, Sexless in the City, was released April 2021. And she is a full-time photographer for the last decade, with her work being featured in Vanity Fair, GQ, Forbes, People, Who, What, Where, US Weekly, Glamour UK, and more. Kat, you are a busy woman.
Just every day I'm hustling
I
and trying to
love it.
find balance in my life and rest.
I love it. I love it. I had a funny moment about a month ago. A friend of mine was saying, "Hey, I'm reading this great book. It's Sexless in the City by Kat Harris. You should check it out." And I had you already booked at that time. And I was like, well, guess what? I get to talk to her. So
Oh my gosh. That is so fun. I love that. That makes
I
me so
know.
happy. It makes me so
Yeah.
happy. Yeah, I was actually just recently, I took a couple weeks off post launch, and with some of my closest friends, we went down to Mexico and we're sitting on the beach and we're on our little chairs, and then there's a group of people behind us, and this girl starts talking about a book she's reading, Sexless in the City. And I was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
what's happening? Wait, people besides like my family and friends are reading this book. It just was, so I turned around and I was like, so hi, my
How's
name
it
is Kat.
going?
Now that you know all the most intimate details of my life, and do you want to have a conversation?
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to read it. It is on my to read list. I don't know about you. I'm always reading like 5 books at one time, but
Oh yeah.
I can't wait to read it. Can you tell us just a little bit about like where did the inspiration for that book come from, and what was your goal in writing it?
Yeah. So the book, why I wrote the book is it's really this culmination moment for me of growing up in Southern conservative Christian culture and learning a really specific set of rules and do's and don'ts that had to do with sex, my body, my femininity. And I really never questioned those narratives or scripts that I was given until I was in my mid to late 20s when I moved to New York City. I
Mm.
moved to New York City. I dated more in 1 year than I had in the previous decade, and started questioning these beliefs that I was given from the church. Like, really? Like, I think I'm the only person not having sex in the universe. Why am I waiting until marriage to have
Mm.
sex? Like, why am I adhering to these narratives? Are they still compelling? Is there still space for them? And so I, on the heels of a breakup, decided to go on a journey of figuring out, what do I believe about God? What do I believe about sex? What do I believe about gender roles? All these things, and really deconstructed my entire faith and the sexual narratives that I've been given growing up, and worked to really rebuild a healthy sexual ethic rooted in freedom, not shame. And so my book is that process. And the book is the questions I asked and the journey I went on, and the kind of the fumbles and failures and shoots and ladders game of moving forward in life and growth. And a huge reason why I wrote it is because when I was on the journey myself, I didn't find a lot of research out there by women.
Mm.
The faith space was predominantly, the voices were male,
Uh-huh.
and many of the men speaking into dating and sexuality in the church got married when they were super young. And I just felt like you have no idea what it's like to be in your 30s and dating in a modern culture. And it's not that perhaps what they were saying was all crap. Some of it was, but I just felt like I want to hear from someone who's actually walking this. I want to hear from a woman in her 30s and her 40s and that's actually navigating dating in a modern culture. And so I wrote the book. To me 10 years ago, I wrote the book that I didn't have. And I hope that it will really just equip women and men. I really want men to read the book as well, but primarily women who grew up and were given a set of rules and do's and don'ts about their bodies, about sex, whether they grew up in the church or not, and then
Mm,
hopefully equip them to develop a healthy sexual ethic that is rooted from the inside out as opposed to connected
mhm.
to external obligation and shame.
You just said so much, and I am so excited to read the book. I myself am working on a book, so I have a ton of admiration for you, a ton of
Oh.
respect. I know oh gosh, I don't even know how to describe it, but you have to be committed, dedicated. And really, the word that keeps coming up is surrender for me as I'm in
Mm,
it, surrendering to the
mhm.
process.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
I have a huge amount of respect for
Yes.
you. And it's great because that's how I thought of the book as well. Of, okay, this is for me 10 years ago. The things
Mhm.
that I
Yeah.
wish had been written, the thing that I was searching for.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm even more excited to read it, and I hope our
Mhm.
audience goes to get it ASAP. It's available on Amazon, everywhere,
Everywhere, Amazon,
everywhere.
Audible,
Yeah.
everywhere. And yeah, to your point, a huge part of the process for me was the two words that were literally written on my computer every day as I wrote were trust and surrender.
Yes.
And I also had another post-it note that said, I finished strong because
Beautiful.
it's really easy to start a project.
It is.
And we live in a culture of, instant gratification. So like do it as long as it feels good. Well, guess what?
It doesn't
Writing a book
always.
freaking sucks. Like it is
Yeah,
hard. And
it
even just
is.
especially if you're writing about something you really care about or your own
Mhm.
story. Even if no one else read this book, the amount of stuff this brought up for me in the process that I thought had been long healed was so worth going through it. But many, many days I didn't want to be writing. Like
Absolutely.
it
Absolutely.
was super hard process and now
Yeah.
I'm post launch and I've never been more tired in my whole life.
I can only imagine. You know, Kat, I wonder if you relate to this. To me, it feels like a real identity process.
Mhm.
And I've gone through this career of being a clinical psychologist and being in
Mhm.
private practice and then moving into the coaching space and
Yeah.
speaking space and really changing how I show up and how
Mhm.
I help people. And it's really caused me to say, who am I? What matters? What is my story? So it feels
Yeah.
like therapy in a way when you're writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even what I feel like we all have invitations of like, what's the hill I'm supposed to die on? What's the hill I want to
Yeah.
die on? And what is my message? I think that every human on this planet has innate worth and value and dignity, and every human is a leader and every human has a story to tell. Like
Hmm.
really honing in on what is my story to tell? What is the story that will be healing for those around me? And often the most healing story for others is giving ourselves the permission to move through our most intense sources of pain and seek healing ourselves first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to shift because you also said something that I think is so powerful. Um, I think about shame and the role that shame can play in our sexuality,
Mhm.
and how when we have shame towards parts of ourselves, we kind of develop, we can develop illness in that area, or it
Mhm.
becomes, yeah, it cuts us off from functioning as our authentic selves. So traditionally in the church, bless you, by the way, in the
Thank
church,
you.
she's sneezing.
I like having myself on mute, but it's like so aggressive. I can't hide it.
It's okay. we're here. Traditionally in the church, there's so much shame that's put
Yeah,
on a woman's sexual being and her
that's right.
understanding sexuality. So what I love about your work is you're saying you can be empowered to have the decision over your body while acknowledging that you're a sexual being.
Right, right.
Tell me more about
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, well, I mean, shame, thank God for Brene Brown's work.
Yes.
But man, shame has such an agenda. Shame keeps us small, stuck, hidden, and isolated.
Yes.
And is so, it just makes me so angry actually that the church, which is supposed to be a place of safety and a place where people feel known, seen, and loved by God and others, has unfortunately in so many instances become a place that is a shame factory.
Hmm.
And what I've also come to experience is that church and culture both give sexual shame. No matter what you have or haven't done sexually, you've probably experienced shame at some point, whether it's from a religious institution or whether you're at a party and your friends are talking about their sexcapades and you don't have a story to tell, or you're ashamed at, oh, wow, like I'm ashamed because I've done too much sexually. I'm ashamed because I haven't done enough sexually. I'm ashamed because I don't know what I'm doing sexually. Like, I just think that shame is a leech that whatever
Mm-hmm.
angle you're entering the sexual conversation is going to try to
Mm-hmm.
latch onto your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that there is freedom from that. And it starts with first normalizing the reality that every human is a sexual being, that
Yes.
sexual desire is good. I believe God created sexual desire. I believe pleasure is good and beautiful. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that it is time to stop the narrative that men are more sexual than women, because in that, a woman who has a strong sex drive is shamed. Oh, is something
Right.
wrong with me because I want to have sex more than my partner? And then there's shame on a man who perhaps maybe he doesn't have as high of a libido. Is there
Mm.
something wrong with me as a man? Am I not man? Am I not man enough because I don't want to have I don't have sex all the time, when our whole lives we're told men are just so sexual. They think about sex every 5
Mhm.
seconds and they can't help themselves. So women, you need to cover your bodies because men are just animals who can't help themselves. So we've given this narrative to women that our bodies are bad, that we are less sexual than men, that men can't control themselves. So that's where we get narratives like, well, she was asking for it.
Mhm.
No, I'm actually never asking for it. And actually, I
Yeah.
believe that men are just as capable of women as women in taking ownership for how they show up in the world.
Yes. I talk
Um,
about this all the time. Let's
yeah.
normalize men taking ownership and showing up
Mhm.
and having emotional intelligence. Men want that. They really
Mhm.
want, men are craving that.
Mhm. Yeah. And so when we have narratives that say like, oh, like men are just their sex drive, like we're
Yeah.
actually dehumanizing men when we're saying that. Like,
Yeah.
and we're oppressing women,
Yes.
right? Um,
I have a story that kind of brings some topics together, and I just want to share it with you, share it with the audience. I think, like many people, I was brought up in Christian church and from a very young age, and it was just, I didn't even question it.
mhm.
Um, and my family, my twin sister and I, we were very involved. I was going to youth group Wednesday nights and going on Sundays, etc. Um, in the youth group, though, I remember being 16, and there was another couple in there. It was a 18-year-old guy and a 16-year-old girl, and I was friends with them. And the woman, the 16-year-old girl, became pregnant.
Mm.
And the way that it was handled by the church is she was asked to leave the youth group, and the guy stayed. And
Wow.
Kat, that was the first time in my young life that I began to question the church.
Yeah, of course.
Um, And I think that speaks to a lot of what we were just talking about.
Yeah, it really does. And what's interesting is when I actually, on my journey of figuring out what do I believe about God and sex, when I went to the Bible, I was shocked at
Mm.
how for women the God of the Bible is, how
Mm.
scandalously and provocatively when Jesus walked the earth, Jesus revealed himself as quote unquote Messiah first to a woman, and not just any woman, this woman at the well, who she would have been seen as dirty and unclean. And she was a
Mm.
Samaritan woman. So she could have discredited his entire ministry. But Jesus was so for women that he revealed himself to a woman first.
Mhm.
In the Jesus story, when Jesus is resurrected, Jesus reveals himself first to a woman alone in a garden. Like, women help fund the early church. Women are leaders in the scriptures. And
Mhm.
something that I think is so powerful is in the Old Testament, in the Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon is this erotic book of
Yes.
the sex life between King Solomon and his wife.
Right.
And in a culture and in a time thousands of years ago where women were viewed as property, where marriages were contracts and not love filled, where men were allowed to run around on their wives and women were required to be pure. In this Song of Solomon book, the book opens with the bride giving her informed and enthusiastic consent about how she wants to experience pleasure in the bedroom. So it, like, the Hebrew God is saying that women get to have pleasure in the bedroom. And in fact, we're going to lead with that. Like,
Yeah.
I think what
One
has
of
been
my
so,
first boyfriends gave me the Song of Solomon, like that you can buy it kind of in a separate,
yeah,
anyways, I'm remembering that. And it was like
yeah.
this romantic gift
You're like,
to
oh,
have that. Like,
it's like a sex
yeah.
foreplay.
Yes, it
They're
is.
like talking about oral sex in
It's
there.
spicy.
It's
Yeah.
spicy. But I
Yeah.
think what it has in my process, what I discovered was, wow, I feel like I'm given this one message from Christian culture that is shaming, that makes like your experience in your youth group where, wow,
Mhm.
doesn't it take two people to have sex? And also, why
Yeah.
would you ever shame anyone for getting pregnant and
Yes.
keeping the baby? But what message do we receive? We receive that the woman's body is bad, that it's her fault,
Yep.
that there's no accountability for the guy. And it
Mhm.
feels so out of alignment with what I read about in the scriptures.
Yes.
I think I feel like the church, I feel like we've gotten it so wrong.
It's really wonderful to think about that and think about how much healing can take place when we start having these conversations, and hopefully leaders in churches are having these
Yeah.
conversations and really
Yeah.
trying to repair
Yeah.
some of the ways that women are seen in the
Yeah.
church. And um, I love what you're talking about. I think of
Mhm.
empowerment of women to have ownership over their bodies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Hmm.
isn't I mean, I feel like that is what we're trying to do culturally as well, right?
Yes.
Even in culture, women are expected to be married, to have kids in ways that men aren't. Most
Hmm.
companies, in fact, don't want to promote women. This is changing, but
Yeah.
women are less likely to be promoted because they're a quote unquote liability. Because what if they get pregnant?
Hmm.
We
Yep.
still have a culture that says men are allowed to be sexual in a way that women aren't. We have a culture that says, like, if a guy, runs around with a bunch of women, that's elevates his status
Hmm.
culturally. If a
Hmm.
woman has a lot of sex, or if a woman has more casual encounters, what is she viewed as? Both women and men call other women like that sluts or whores, or wow, I don't want to be with her. Well, why are we still shaming women for being sexual beings? Why do we still not have a equal standard for the
Hmm.
expectations of men and women?
Hmm.
Um, why are we not asking men in their 30s or 20s or 40s, why aren't you married? I mean, I'm 35. My guy friends don't get hounded the way I do about why are
Right.
you still single? is there, and underneath it, you almost feel like they're kind of trying to figure out if, is there something wrong with me? And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
no, I could be married if I wanted right now. I haven't met someone up till this point that is someone that I want to partner with, but men don't get asked those questions in the way that women
yes.
do. And I think it's time that those conversations shift.
I really appreciate that, and I think I had a huge awareness of this, of just how internalized it was for me about the biological clock and the timeline. And oh my gosh, I'm a woman. I should be a mother by now. What's happening? When I
Mhm.
turned 30, I had this meltdown and I went and got my eggs checked and I'm
Yeah.
researching freezing everything. And it would have been different if it was because that was what I had wanted to do and I thought about
Mhm.
it. But I knew that it was coming from this external pressure of
Yeah.
that's what I should be doing. And
Right. Right.
so I had to process all of that right around my
Totally.
30th birthday. And I imagine many women feel that way too.
Yeah.
There's these arbitrary numbers
Yeah.
that we hit and we
Mhm.
start to, question. I know that this is the path I want, but what are other people thinking?
Right. And I think too, normalizing, uh, so normalizing the desire to have children and normalizing the desire if you don't want to have children.
Yes.
You are not less of a woman if you don't want to get married, if you don't want to be in a monogamous relationship. You are no less human if you don't
Yes.
ever want to have kids. Like that doesn't make you less of a woman. And the other side of that too is something that I've been going through the past few years is, okay, I do want to have children. So what does that look like for me? I've always said I want it within, I want to be married, I want to raise a kid, I want to have a baby with my own body, with my partner. But what if that doesn't happen? What are my other options? So I've
Yeah.
been researching fertility options for the last few years of, okay, like just giving myself the permission to explore what are other avenues. Okay, could I foster? Could I adopt? Could I use a
Yes.
sperm donor? Could I freeze my eggs? Like figuring out what are all my options.
Mm,
Even that has been, I mean, when I started going through that process, it was so grief filled because I first had to acknowledge how I'm not where I thought I would be at this stage in my life. And thank God I didn't get married in my 20s. Like that would have been a freaking mess.
mhm,
But wow, like, okay, this isn't happening, at least up until this point, the way I thought it would. Let me sit with that grief and
mhm.
disappointment. And like, what are other ways to reimagine the life that I really want to have? And are there ways that I could step into motherhood from a different angle? Um, so I think it's giving every woman the permission to be where she's at, to process what it is that she wants, and then like, okay, how can I move towards that?
Beautiful. This whole process of, okay, when I'm in acceptance, when I'm in reality, that
Mhm.
empowers me to
Mhm.
align with what I want. If I avoid grieving or avoid being honest with myself about what I want, then I'm not able to empower myself to follow other paths and be
Mhm.
open to other ways of meeting my heart's desires.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that
Mhm.
example.
Oh, thanks.
And it's important. I like that you talked about, though, allow yourself to grieve. We have to
Yeah.
we have to feel through. The only way forward is through.
Yeah.
Process
Yeah.
the feelings. We don't want to,
Mhm.
but that's what we have to do.
I know. It's cool. But when we don't, it just is going to come out sideways, right?
Yes, it
Or
does.
I think also what can happen, I think this happens for a lot of single women. We lie to ourselves and pretend to not want what we really want.
Yes.
So whether it's, oh, like I really do want children, I really do want
Yes.
a partner. It's like, oh no, like I'm a single girl, like I'm a
Yes.
badass business owner, like I don't need
Yes.
anyone. Well, yeah, of course, none of us need anyone, but it's okay to want. I think so
I
often
talk
as
about
women,
that.
we
Yeah.
shut down our desire because the cost of hope feels too great,
It's vulnerable, right? It's
so
this
vulnerable.
deep vulnerability to share what you want. And in being honest with what we want, we allow ourselves to fulfill it. So it's
Mhm.
so incredibly important. And yeah, I'll talk about like bad bitch mode, like just what you're saying, badass business owner, like,
Mhm.
hey, I, don't need no man, etc. And honestly, we can understand that as a defense mechanism, as a protective
Totally.
mode. It's protecting
Mhm.
my heart.
Yeah.
But what we don't realize is it's cutting yourself off
Yeah.
also from
Yeah.
what you want.
Well,
Yeah.
and also I think one of the most compelling things about a love relationship is that it's a choice. That
Yes.
it's not a need. Like,
Yes.
I need oxygen. Yeah, I don't need a man, but I want one. And that's so beautiful.
It
It's
is.
it's so beautiful. So I've been a wedding photographer for 15 years, and I've shot so many different weddings, but something that always feels so powerful to me is seeing these two people that are committing to each other, and it's not because they have to.
Right.
Like, imagine like being at a wedding and listening to a couple give vows to each other, and it's, to having to hold because I have to. It's like, no, like I want you. There's
Yes.
Kirsten White, I think it's in the Chaos and the Stars. She says, I didn't fall into love, like I walked into love with my eyes wide open. Like,
Mhm.
love is such a choice, and I think that's what makes it so I think it's why we all want it. We all
Mhm.
want to be in relationships where we choose to be in them.
Mhm.
As but you have your siblings, oh, they're my family, like, oh, they're my
Yeah.
family, like I love them, they're my family. But no, like love, like I want you. To
Yes.
me, that's so much more powerful than need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really getting to that place where you are giving yourself your self-worth, you are filling yourself up
Yeah.
in whatever way that looks like for you. And then yes, it's this want, it's the I like that walking in with eyes wide open, the
Yeah.
the decision that
Hmm.
creates such a beautiful connection that is empowering to both
Hmm.
people and
Yeah.
freeing and helps both people grow
Right.
instead of, you and I know many women will find themselves in a codependent dynamic that feels like prison or can feel really, really stuck. So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
idea of, yes, you can decide that you want to partner with someone, and that makes it
Right.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to your point of like want and need, when I am in a place of like, I like need this other person to exist, totally
Yeah.
codependent, right? But it also is it's me releasing power, it's me
Mhm.
releasing autonomy and ownership for how I'm showing up.
Yep.
And I think it's so important that I get to meet my needs. Like, no
Yep.
one else is responsible to meeting my needs, or even my pleasure is up to me.
Yep.
I get to communicate my needs. I get to first take care of myself, put the gas mask on myself first before taking care of another person. And even I
Mhm.
feel like that goes into growth, finances. I get to be the partner that I want to be. I get to deal with my daddy issues. If I no partner is going to heal my
Mhm.
daddy issues. If I want a partner that is financially stable, I get to be financially stable. Like, we attract and are attracted to people that are on the same emotional level
Mhm.
as us. So if
Yes.
I want someone who's emotionally available and I keep attracting men that are emotionally unavailable, it's
Yeah.
showing me that I have work to do. So like, how
Absolutely.
can we take ownership for how we're showing up and work on ourselves so that we can have beautiful relationships?
And this is the some of the work you and I do, and the I have a program, the Empowered Secure Love program, and it's
Mhm.
all about that internal work because you and I know that hey, you can do all kinds of things externally, get your hair done, whatever, but if you are not fixing that internal part of
Mhm.
yourself,
Mhm.
you'll just keep repeating those same patterns over
Yeah.
and over.
Oh,
So
yeah.
incredibly powerful
Yeah.
what you're
Mm.
describing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I want to shift a little bit because we talked about surrender with writing the book,
Yeah.
but you and I know the power of surrender in your dating life.
Mhm.
And I would love to hear from you what that looks like and how you nurture your dating mindset, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a really good question. Surrender can look so many different ways in dating for me. Two things come to my mind. One is getting really, really, really clear about what I want. What am I looking
Yes.
for? What are my non-negotiables in a relationship? What type of partner do I want? How do I want that relationship to feel? Do I want to have kids? Like getting so clear about what it is that I want. So a future vision that then helps me walk out today with clarity and integrity, and then holding it loosely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like what happened for me for a really long time is I got so like I knew exactly what I want. I'm not gonna compromise on anything.
Yeah.
And then it was like I was almost like legalistic about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reality is I can be in high worth and be very clear about what I want and surrender and trust the process of, okay,
Yeah.
what if love looks different than what I expected for myself? What if, what if the person for me, what if he looks different than I thought he might look, like physically?
Yeah.
You know, what if I, it's surrendering to the process of different avenues of meeting someone.
Yes.
So it's being open to different portals, whether it's, you know, I feel like it can, online dating, I understand that it can be difficult, but the reality is that over 50% of couples meet
Yes.
online. Online dating isn't going anywhere. Guess what? The last few guys I've dated, I met on Instagram. Like, I
Yeah.
think part of surrendering to the process is being open
Be
to
open.
encountering love in different ways. When I'm out, taking my headphones out, looking
Yes.
people in the eyes, smiling, and not just with the sole agenda of this might be the one that I snatch up, but no, how can I lead with a posture of openness and curiosity in
Yep.
every area of my life and practice being present? And then not closing off like online dating, social media setups from friends. Like go on a date with someone. Be open. You never know what's going to happen. Um, so I feel those are a couple ways. And then just more personal is being willing to surrender someone who isn't what you want. Because
Mm.
sometimes or a lot of times something can feel better than nothing. So it might be, oh, like, well, he has like all these things, but like he doesn't want kids. Well, if you know you want kids,
Mm-hmm.
like that, you don't have to settle for that. And you can trust that you are worth having all of what you want. And so trusting and surrendering that person and walking away, knowing that, no, like I know what I really want. Or it could be, wow, like I really, really like this person, but they've shown me over and over and over again that they are conflict avoidant and unwilling to receive
Mm-hmm.
feedback. All right, it's not my job to fix this person if they're not interested in having a growth mindset. Like I'm walking away because something isn't better than nothing. And I'm worth the type
Mm-hmm.
of relationship that I really want and long for. And even I was seeing someone in this past year, and it was like, oh my gosh, almost everything was there. But this one thing.
Mm.
And I was like, man, and it was a non-negotiable type thing.
Yeah.
And
So
that was
hard.
an opportunity for me to trust and surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know what? Like by me moving forward in this relationship, like I am not trusting myself. I'm not trusting God. I am believing that like God couldn't have an amazing relationship for me. So it's surrendering
Yep.
the almosts for
This
believing
is
that you're
beautiful.
worthy of the whole thing. It's surrendering the crumbs and trusting that you're worth a feast.
Yes. So
And that can be
powerful.
really hard.
It can be. I'll
Mhm.
talk about how we have to make space for what we truly
Mhm.
desire. And if you have, situationships or people who are okay, they're almost what I want, or on again, off again, etc. and you have these relationships that are not really what you want. Maybe they're 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, but they don't really meet what you desire and what you know you
Yeah.
want. They are taking up your valuable
Yep.
space, they're taking up your valuable energy, and you deserve to make space for what you truly desire.
Right. Right. And even what if they have 9 out of 10 things, but the one thing they don't have is they only view you as a friend.
Yeah.
Girl, I can't tell you how long and for how many years I settled for a friendship with guys that I was really in love with, that
Mm,
hoping that, oh, maybe they just need more time. Maybe, you know, no, if a guy is not interested in you,
don't hold the space. Yeah.
yeah, because then I was blocking myself from
Mhm.
love for so long because I would get in these long, drawn out faux relationships with men who really just wanted to be my friend and would communicate that, but I would be hopeful that they would eventually change their mind. And what I was really doing was working out my daddy issues of,
Yes.
oh, maybe I can heal this little girl in me that
Mhm.
wished her dad would have stayed. I could have shown him that I was worthy enough for him to change. Like really, that is what so much of that was about for me.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and
The
it just
un
can manifest and so so loudly in our love lives.
It can when it's not healed,
Mhm,
and so powerful that you can take your energy back and take your
mhm,
time back. And
yeah,
I think knowing that even when we look at those past relationships, I myself love dating unavailable men, either in the form of very long distance relationships
mm,
or kind of sometimes I wouldn't say inappropriate, but relationships where there was an authority. So like I dated my high school English teacher outside of high
mhm,
school, but that was somebody who was very unavailable.
mhm,
Anyways,
yeah,
it was that same thing.
mhm,
But when you're no longer doing that, you're freeing yourself up. And what I was gonna say is those relationships teach us. It's not
yeah,
as if it's a waste of time, right? You're learning about yourself, you're growing in those relationships. And I really truly believe that any relationship we have is designed, it's by design, and it's there to help us grow in some
mhm.
way. I
I
really believe
agree.
that.
I agree. I think every opportunity, every interaction is an opportunity to grow if we choose it to be. If we're open for it.
Yes.
And I think another thing when you were talking that came up for me is, man, we're not good sitting in the tension or sitting in the not yet. Like, so
Mm,
we fill our lives with the almosts. It's easier
oh,
to be like, oh, I'm feeling lonely. I'm just gonna text this guy, get my little dopamine hit, even though I
yeah.
know this person isn't gonna really give me what I want. And so what's harder is for me to be like, wow, I'm feeling lonely tonight.
Yep.
I really wish that I had someone right now. It's
Mhm.
so much harder to sit with that, but I think it's a muscle that if we lean into and strengthen it will serve us in every area of our life. Like what if I
Yep.
let myself sit in my unmet desire as opposed to watching 3 hours of Netflix or scrolling
Yep.
for 2 hours on Instagram or texting that guy that I know doesn't really like me. What
Mhm.
if we got better at sitting in the tension of unmet desire and expectation?
Yeah. This is so powerful, and it really does translate into every area of life.
Mhm.
But I think you're talking about embracing the process here too, of
Mhm.
this is part of the process
Mhm.
to be
Yeah.
able to sit through it. And yes, it's a muscle. You become stronger, you become better at it. And I think about in my own dating journey, um, I had to learn how to be alone and how to not cover it up with,
Mhm.
whether it's friends or TV or
Yeah.
alcohol,
Mhm.
right? Finding ways to cover up loneliness. But
Yeah.
once I allowed myself to really sit with loneliness, it really helped me reconnect with myself.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity to really reconnect with ourselves when we're
Yeah.
when we're sitting in loneliness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's good.
that could be a whole other podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But I
for
really
sure.
I really appreciate your perspective on that. And once again, yeah, allow yourself to have that space for the partner that you really want and
Mhm.
really desire.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's in the space that the unexpected happens.
Yeah, and so in the program, I have an exercise that I'll do with women, and it's actually writing out a letter or writing out notes to your partner and
Mhm.
checking in with them even before you've met them. So if you're in the
Mhm.
dating process, you haven't met anybody, it's holding that space for that partnership that
Mhm.
you know is available to you
Yeah.
and that you deserve. And actually writing out a note, writing out a letter, because that's telling your brain, even though it's not physically here right now,
Mhm.
I know it is out there in the world and it is available to me.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
really have to feel into that and know that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's staying connected to hope. It's
Yes.
believing in possibility. It's believing that outside of what my current reality is showing me, what my circumstances, feelings, or past have shown me, that a different reality is possible. And that's what faith is. Faith
Yes.
is leaning into the unseen. Faith is
Yes.
saying, just because this is the way things are, doesn't mean that this is the way things will always be.
Mhm.
Or I love Ruthie Lindsay says it in her book, There I Am. She says, just because you know a book by heart doesn't make it true.
Mm.
So, like, creating space is trusting in, in possibility. It's
Yes.
putting my mindset towards abundance because
Yes.
our minds are evidence. They're on the evidence hunt constantly because they're wanting to create short circuits and patterns to make new neural pathways so that we don't have to think about things. So our brain is gonna look for evidence, and often we are very committed to looking for the negative evidence. See, I'm always the friend. It happened again. And so we
Right.
get so committed to these limiting beliefs, and our brains are just on the evidence hunt. So we're just looking constantly for evidence of beliefs that might be real because of your past circumstances.
Mhm.
But I get the opportunity to rewrite the story at any point.
Absolutely.
So if we're going
And
to be looking for evidence anyways, like why not, like what you're saying, lean into possibility?
yes. And I love that you said at any point you can decide to do this no matter your
Mhm.
past, no matter your dating history. You're never
Mhm.
too broken. You
That's
can
right.
decide to lean into faith, to lean into possibility at any point in your
Yeah,
life.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, there's one last thing I wanted to just touch base on with you because I think a lot of the listeners can relate to this. Being such a successful, driven woman that you are, how do you make time in your life for dating? What does it look like for you to balance that?
Yeah. Well, I think that we make time for the things that matter to us. And I think that our how we spend our money, how we spend our time reflects what our priorities are. And so you can say, "Oh yeah, like dating is a huge priority to me." And then I can coach you through and we can look at your life and, well, you're okay, you're working 14 hours a day, you have plans every night in the week. Actually, based off results, based off like actually how you spend your time, this isn't a priority to you. So for me, it's been a practice over the last 5 or so years of creating space in my life.
Yeah.
With our careers, we're willing to do anything and everything that we want to do, that we're willing to do anything and everything to move forward, to climb the
Mhm.
corporate ladder, to get the financial breakthrough. We'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on education. We'll work for little to no pay at internships. We'll move cross country for job opportunities. And yet with love, we'll be like, well, if it happens, it happens. Or I don't want to like be
Oh
too
my
controlling
gosh.
about it.
I know.
And it's
You're
like,
so
wow, like
right.
what if we were just as intentional about our love life, if that's something that matters to us as we
Yes.
were about our career, about our fitness. And so if a relationship is something that you want, does your current life reflect that? If not, how can you take steps towards being just as intentional about your dating life as you are about your career. Maybe that means hiring a dating coach or a love coach or going to therapy. Maybe it means downloading that dating app and really giving it a solid try. And maybe it's blocking. This is something that I've done for years is I block out a day on my calendar and that's my date night. Even if I'm not dating
Yes.
anyone, that night on the
Yes.
calendar is open in case one of the online dates comes through. And if not, if that night is open, then I get to take myself on a date. I get to show myself how I want to be treated. And so how
Yes.
we spend our time reflects our priorities. So for me, it's just super important to have a life that reflects the life that I want.
Absolutely. I had to have that, come to Jesus moment myself, probably like
Yeah.
2, 3 years ago. And I was, stepping into the coaching space and coaching all these women on dating. And then I myself was not making any time for
Mm-hmm.
it, working till 11 p.m., not even really seeing my friends, etc. And I had this realization of, I think so many women tell themselves this, oh, when they show up, then I'll make time, right? No, it doesn't work that way. You have to create the space before the person is in your life and
Yeah.
make it a priority.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's like saying, I'll be generous when I'm rich. No,
yeah,
generosity is a posture.
it is.
So if I get to practice being generous, whatever my paycheck is, if that's a
Yes.
value for me, like I can be generous today. If I'm stingy when I don't have money, guess what? You'll be stingy when you do have
When you
money.
do, absolutely.
Same principle.
Money makes you more of who you already are, and being in a relationship will make you more of who you are as well. It'll have you
Mm,
feel more of what you already feel.
yeah,
It's a
that's such a good
multiplier.
point.
Money's a multiplier, a relationship is a multiplier. So
Yeah.
you have to be so conscious of where you're at. Yeah.
That's so good. I haven't heard it
Yeah.
put it that way before.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you, and I think our audience is just going to love this episode. I do have one more question.
Yeah.
So I ask this of every guest I have, and it's, if you're walking down the street, somebody you've never met before, and they come up to you and they want your best life advice at the moment, it doesn't have to be of all time, it's not going on record all time, but at the moment, what would you say is your best overall life advice?
Oh gosh. At the moment, I would say that resting is your secret sauce.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, resting, giving yourself the permission to rest.
That's awesome. I so agree. We
Yeah.
need it. We
Hmm.
need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. And how can people connect with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my Instagram and website is The Refined Woman. My weekly podcast is The Refined Collective, and my book, Sexless in the City, you can get at Amazon or on Audible or Barnes and Noble, anywhere you buy books. Or if you want to learn more about my book, you can go to sexlessinthecitybook.com.
Thank you so much, Kat. This was such a
Yeah.
wonderful conversation. I appreciate your vulnerability. That is the name of the podcast. Let's get vulnerable. And you were
Yes.
vulnerable. And I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing with us.
well, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Of course. And everyone, I'm wishing you high self worth and great relationships. We'll talk to you soon.